posted sometime next week on the Office of Early Learning webpage on the DPI website. You'll be able to find it there under recorded webinars. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Amy Ryan.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us at this amazing LETRS kickoff, our statewide kickoff for North Carolina today. We are extremely excited. I'll begin first of all introducing the North Carolina DPI staff that have been working together and planning behind the scenes. I'm Amy Ryan. I'm the Director of the Office of Early Learning at NCDPI. You just heard from Dan Tatro, who is our Project Manager in the Office of Early Learning. We also have with us today Tanya Parrish, who is our Read to Achieve Section Chief, and Kelly Bentheim, who is our consultant, and she serves our representative for supporting our lead consultant there, that role. So we really appreciate you joining us. We're excited about our partnership with Voyager Sopris as we begin to deploy the science of reading across our state. We will begin obviously with cohort 1, but we wanted to open this up to everyone as we know there are lots of questions beyond just cohort 1. We appreciate all of your patience as we've worked a lot more on logistics than we had anticipated behind the scenes. It took us just a little bit longer than we had hoped, but we have spent endless hours collaborating with this amazing team and helping build supports for districts as well as our preschools with brainstorming tools and processes to make this as smooth as possible. While I'm sure we haven't thought of everything, please keep in mind we do have a continuous improvement mindset, and our goal is to get your feedback and make improvements as needed based on that feedback. So feel free to reach out at any time. We wish we had funding for every educator in North Carolina, but as you know, we are thankful for the support that we do have from our legislators, our state board, our governor, NCDPI superintendent, and senior leadership there for the large amount that they have funded beyond what the legislation required. So for that, we are extremely thankful to be able to impact so many educators all at once, reaching students across the entire continuum. Thank you for your dedication, your hard work, and your commitment to our North Carolina schools, families and communities and students. I know this is just one thing that you have on your plate. So we're here to thank you not only for this, but for everything you're doing. You are so appreciated. And so at this time, I would love to turn it over to my dear friend, Tony, as she introduces our Voyager Sopris team.
Thank you, Amy, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am really excited to be here with all of you today. My name is Tony Backstrom. I am a part of the LETRS team, and I want to introduce quickly my colleagues that are a part of this, and it's like a task force almost of us from North Carolina DPI and from the LETRS program itself. We have with us Jeffrey Vincent, who is our Regional Vice President for the Eastern Region, Jane Priest, who is your local account executive there in North Carolina. We also have Cassandra Wheeler, who is our Senior Success Manager for state level implementations. We are supported by many others that are part of the team, but those are the ones that are here with us today. And you'll get to hear from them as we get to questions and answers later on, where we'll all be working together to ensure that we answer all the questions that come in. You do have a chat area function on the meeting, and so please utilize that as questions come up. If we don't answer them in that moment, we'll make sure that we get to them at the end. As I mentioned, I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. We have been working for a very long time, diligently with that team at DPI, with the legislators, with the governor, and with the superintendent and her staff in order to bring LETRS to all of you. And it has truly taken all of those involved to get where we are, and we're excited that we're at this stage and ready to move forward. We appreciate the patience as there's been conversations happening and everyone is excited, and know that this really is going to make a difference for each of you and for those students that you serve. As we begin to think about this, I think it's really good to really level set and come back to why this is so important. This is really important because educators really have the biggest impact on the students that they serve. And this investment is in you as educators. We think that that's important because the National Council on Teacher Quality has been looking at the syllabi of our educator preparation programs for a number of years. They started back in 2006, and in their most recent survey and look and study at those syllabi, only about half of those educator preparation programs provided the science of reading to teachers. That means that for most of you on here with us today and your colleagues, the majority of you have never received all of that really dense, important, in-depth research around how students learn to read, what are the best practices, what are the best strategies to use with students around the science of reading. And that has an impact because if we don't have that knowledge, if it's never been given to us as educators, we're not able then to reach our students in the way in which many of them need. And that's reflected by NAEP data. And while this data isn't a bright shining star, it is similar across the country. The majority of the fourth grade students across the country, like in North Carolina, are not reading proficiently. And the way in which we can make that biggest difference is through that investment in teachers. In providing that expertise around the science of reading so that you as educators are best able and equipped to make decisions around curriculums and interventions, small group work, that you are able to not only provide that core instruction for your entire class, but as you pull students out, whether they be students that are excelling, they had that wiring, neurological pathways, that wiring was ready to go and they need challenged, whether their wiring was exactly the way it should be and with that really good core instruction, they're ready to go, whether they're tangled in those neurological pathways and they need your extra assistance in finding detours around those tanglings. When you have that knowledge and expertise, then you can give that to your students. You can make better choices and better decisions. We know that the science matters, and we know that when teachers have that, it makes a difference for students. So when we think about LETRS specifically in that science of reading, professional learning that you're going to be provided, there are 3 separate courses that are available. Our elementary teachers, K-5, will receive LETRS training. That is the full LETRS 3rd edition course. Along with those K-5 educators, we have a handful of other titles that will be a part of that, that's funded through this DPI initiative. A coach, those EL teachers, and etc. We'll be covering that if you haven't already received that information. The second course that we're going to talk about of those 3 is LETRS for administrators. Administrators are critical to the success that systems can have. They are the instructional leaders. They must have an understanding of the science of reading, maybe not have to be the expert, but they do need to have an understanding, and they need to transfer that understanding to really know and put into place all the supports that teachers need to be successful. That might be looking at data and keeping that focus. That might be what tools teachers need, schedules in the day, etc. We provide that through a framework for them to work through. We also have a course dedicated in that 3rd course for our littlest learners, focused on their teachers, LETRS for early childhood for that pre-K space. Now, we don't need teachers to teach them to read earlier, but those littlest learners are in the prime place for teachers to help that circuitry, those neurological pathways in that left hemisphere of the brain, to be primed and ready so that when those students get into kindergarten, they are ready to learn to read. These 3 courses have been in place. Right there in Onslow County Schools in North Carolina.
What I'm most excited about is what we've gained through this letter training this year. We had the chance to finally collaborate with one another on a vertical level. We were able to spend time as a team learning this new knowledge. It gave us the why to why we teach reading and what we're doing for our students. It helped increase foundational skills, both for our students and for making us aware of what they need. All right, now you read it to me. Point to the words and you read it. I will say during such a trying time this year, we were able to find success in the classroom using this training and helping one another as a team. Something that is very important about the success that we had here at Somerset Elementary with the letters training was the fact that we really collaborated as a whole school. We collaborated vertically, we collaborated across our grade levels. We made it important to make time to develop a cohort where we could all learn together. We actually used the I do, we do, you do gradual release. We did the modules on our own. We came together every week as a team vertically, K3, to work on and talk about what we had learned in those modules. And then we were able to take some parts of those that we discussed that were important and start to begin to implement them in the classroom. It really was an overall whole group, whole school approach to this training. And with that, we were able to be successful, and it was easier to learn with one another and to really level the playing field. It went from my students to our students, and all the students here at Somerset are our students.
You know, there are a few key words that came through there that I want to draw our attention to. Collaboration, teamwork, our students, vertical alignment, whole systems. That is really what LETRS aims to do, is bring educators together around the science of reading so that the focus is always on the instruction that's happening and the outcomes. How do we meet and reach every student exactly where they are, knowing where we need them to be and what are those steps along that continuum of acquisition of skill? And how are we going to provide that instruction to them around each of those skills? We do that by giving you all of that scientific reading research. We do it in a way that over time builds your expertise and has you effectively transferring what you're learning into what you do every day in your classroom. You'll deepen your knowledge, you'll broaden your knowledge, and you're going to intentionally use it in your classroom. Just because we know something doesn't always mean that it translates into changing the choices that we make on a day-to-day basis. You know, sometimes I mentioned, I think I did earlier, that, you know, an example completely off topic is, I know that French fries are not good for me. I shouldn't eat them for all kinds of reasons. And yet, just because I know that doesn't mean I have ever met a French fry that I don't like. We don't want that to happen in this education setting. We want all of you to learn that reading research and be mindful and intentional about what you do with that and how that impacts the choices you make for each and every one of your students that you work with this year and every year to come. We do that in a way that helps to relate to what you do every day. Educators have so much on their plates, and Amy referred to this earlier. We want this to be sustainable and to help ease some of that over time. It is interactive through multiple modalities. And we know that if we can do that and do it over time in a way that isn't overwhelming, that makes those connections very intentionally, it is going to be practical for you, and you will be able to see the differences that gaining that knowledge are making for you every day in your class. That is possible because we synthesize that 40 years of scientific reading research. You might recognize those five big components from the National Reading Panel. Those are critical to reading success, no doubt. We also know that literacy is a little broader than that. We know that English is a language-based system. That means that oral language is fundamental to student success. We know that literacy also encompasses encoding or writing. So writing and spelling are inextricably linked to decoding and reading, and we have to understand that connection. And if we think about that a little deeper, we also needed to include all the research around the organization and structure of language, because that's the basis of English, is the language. So these words you've probably heard over the last few months and years: morphology, semantics, discourse, etymology, pragmatics, all of that information synthesized in one place in a digestible way for all of you to then be able to not only access it and learn it, but really begin to understand and make the connection back to all of those choices you make when you're standing in your classroom. Because we've done all of that, it is accredited by the International Dyslexia Association. I do want to be clear that this isn't intended to be used only with your students that might have dyslexia. Rather, this knowledge base, this expertise, allows you to reach every student and further their journey on that trajectory in a positive way. Students that are right on track, students that might be advanced, and absolutely students that need our additional support and intention. How do we do that? I'm going to talk briefly about those 3 different courses that I mentioned. The first one, LETRS 3rd edition, is for those K-5 educator space. This content is intended to be completed over 2 years. And I know that sounds like a long time. But remember, we don't want to overwhelm you with throwing a lot of learning and information at you without allowing you to have time to digest that information and learning and actually apply it to what you do every day. So we've broken it into 2 different volumes. Volume 1, units 1 through 4, is year 1. Volume 2, units 5 through 8, is year 2. Now, I will say, we can also break that down a little further. We may have cohorts that want to start and will start partway through a year. So we can break that down a little further if we look at those individual units. That roughly breaks down to 2 units per semester. Now, I know all of you may have followed that. Some of you may have said, yeah, and now I totally didn't make sense. We'll come back to that again, I promise. Really, it's 2 units per semester over a 24-month period, where you'll be learning in those small digestible chunks. Within each of those units are multiple sessions. Within those sessions, there will be multiple modalities and ways that you will learn, and taking that back to what you do every day. You'll also then be able to show your understanding, check it along the way. You'll have time for that authentic discourse that Onslow was talking about. And all of this happens for each of these courses. But if I look at early childhood for a moment specifically, so this is for our pre-K educators. Again, we're not focused on really trying to teach students to read earlier, but those littlest learners are the perfect moment to prime that circuitry and get them ready. So we focus on playful learning and planful play. Intentional play that has a focus and a reason. We need it all to be developmentally appropriate. We need to ensure that we're attending to their social and emotional needs as well. So over the course of the 4 units and LETRS for early childhood, we break that content down into 10 sessions. Each of those 10 sessions, again, digestible chunks that have multiple modalities for learning that you'll also connect back to what you do every day. And for our administrators, for those building leaders, district leaders, we know that you need to have an understanding of the science of reading. You need to be able to have conversations with your teachers around what they are learning. And you do not have to be the ultimate expert. So we focus on providing that overview of that science of reading, the big ideas. And then we empower you to be an instructional leader. How do you best support the educators in your building? Using a literacy framework and going through each of the areas of a framework, aligning what you currently have in place and what you might be able to improve in order to improve and encourage and empower your teachers so that your students can have better outcomes. But all of this is done around that same science. So everyone within a system is moving forward together. That's one of those other tenets that came through in that video we saw earlier, together. So how do we do this? Each of you will have access to a unique username and password to your online course, whichever of those 3 online courses is for you. There is accompanying print text that you will receive at your district offices that will be disseminated to you that supports that online learning. In that online learning, there will be videos from the experts. There are videos of actual classroom instruction that are exemplars. There are interactive activities embedded throughout. That will be supported by live face-to-face sessions. Like we're here today, although incredibly more interactive, because we want to ensure that the learning from the online and text is happening, clarify any confusing information, expand what you've been learning, and help continue with those extensions into the classroom practice implications. We do that in a combination of virtual sessions where they would be done like we are today, although much more interactively because they will be longer and we want to ensure that you are engaging in that content, and those live on site where you will be able to come together face to face as it's safe for all of us to do that, to be able to continue those. That creates this blended solution where every educator has multiple exposures to learning and that information through multiple modalities. I know I can't be the only one that has been a part of an online webinar or a course or read something, and I'm pretty sure I got it. And then a day or two later, I'm thinking about it and I need to go back because I'm not sure anymore if I really understood it exactly like I was supposed to. Through this model, those multiple exposures continue to help build on one another. And there is the option always to revisit information and pull it forward again. I mentioned this intentional transfer of what you are learning into your classroom. For our pre-K teachers and for our elementary or K-5 space, in that full LETRS course and LETRS for early childhood, there is this integrated bridge to practice that is just that. At the end of each one of those sessions, those digestible chunks of learning, we will ask you very specifically to take what you've learned and apply it back to 3 students that you're working with. This is in essence you building a mini case study. We aren't asking you to create a whole new lesson plan and taking hours out of your day and additional work. Rather, we want this to be small bits where you're focused on that new learning and applying it to those 3 students. And over time, that building this portfolio where not only could you tell anyone what you've been learning, you can show them exactly how that's impacting what you are doing with your students in your classroom. For our administrators, for our leaders, there are incredibly important tools that are available. We know that as we go through content, we want to support our teachers along the way. Teaching is not a profession for the faint of heart. There are a lot of expectations and a lot of demands on time. We want leaders to be able to recognize when teachers need additional support helping to keep them on track for this learning to happen so that it can impact instruction. We also know that depending on the content in any given session or unit, it may be more or less familiar for someone. A different person might be able to understand it more quickly than the next person. Again, the reason for multiple modalities and exposures to information, and the ability through these quick little checks of understanding along the way to be able to come and support teachers where they need additional support along the way. We don't want any educator to be left behind or to continue to move forward really not understanding any of that science. You are going to become a reading rocket scientist. And when I say that, that might cause some anxiety, and I hope a lot of excitement, because we are all in this together to make sure that you are successful as we come through at the end of all of that training. We do that because we know when it's done well, it can make a difference. In 2013, the state of Mississippi in legislation passed the Literacy-Based Promotion Act that required that third grade students prove and show proficiency on their third grade test. Fortunately for the students in Mississippi, they also said, we also need to ensure that teachers understand the science and are prepared to teach the students to read. They chose LETRS as the program to provide that knowledge to teachers in the systems. There was a statistically significant difference in the impact that teachers had with a higher knowledge of the science of reading in the interactions in the classroom, engagement, time spent on foundational skills, etc. Because of that training, of the increases in teachers' knowledge around the science of reading, the state of Mississippi has been on a continued growth set on those NAEP scores. In 2017, they were one of only 2 states to show growth on the 4th grade NAEP. In 2019, they were the only state that showed growth on 4th grade NAEP scores in literacy. Now, Mississippi knows that they still have work to do, and they continue to stay focused on providing that science of reading and keeping those instructional practices focused on that science of reading. Now, that was in 4th grade students, and we only trained their K-3 teachers, so we know that those foundational skills, when they are in place, stay with students as they move forward. But they also saw growth in their 3rd grade end of year state level testing over the courses of those years when we were training those K-3 teachers. The bottom line really is your leaders, DPI, Superintendent Truitt, the governor, the legislators believe in you. They want to invest in each of you so that you can be the experts. You can have the biggest impact and positive influence over the students that you serve every year. We're excited to be on this journey with all of you. We are partners and we are in this together. You will see all of us often along the way. If you have questions as you go throughout this process, this is a dedicated email address for questions around the LETRS implementation in North Carolina. You might want to jot this down. I know Dan is going to come on and talk about some specifics that may be of interest and important to you, and then we will open it up for questions and answers as we finish out our time today. But I just want to make sure I have a moment to say I am, again, really excited for the journey that you are all about to embark on.
Hello, everyone. This is Dan Tatro with the Office of Early Learning. I'd also like to, I'm going to talk for a few minutes and provide some additional information about pre-kindergarten that we've gotten many questions about. And I'd also like to introduce and recognize Christy Snuggs, who is also on the call here from DHHS. And not sure if Christy's got her camera on or not. There she is. Yeah, she does. Yeah, I had to scroll over to find you. So, welcome, Christy. She's
Thank you.
our close partner for pre-K there at DHHS. Talking a little bit about pre-K, so who will get trained? So first, the legislation requires that all NC pre-K teachers are trained, and that includes teachers in all settings, so teachers in public school classrooms, private child care sites, and Head Start sites that are NC pre-K. Additionally, public school pre-kindergarten classrooms that do not use NC pre-K funding, those pre-K teachers will also receive training. So that would be an additional 900 or so pre-K classrooms. Teacher assistants in those classrooms at this time will not receive training. So that is a question that we've been asked. In addition, site administrators for NC pre-K classrooms will receive the letters for administrators training. That would include site directors in private childcare settings, Head Start settings, and public school settings. In some districts, that the person who is responsible for pre-K at the school level may be a preschool coordinator, so that would include that person as that site administrator for pre-K. Additionally, we will be providing some funding to help with cover substitutes and or stipends if the training happens to be outside of the workday or on a Saturday, which is an option. We will provide more information about that. We're just working on how that funding will be distributed, and we will provide more information on that later. But it will also include pre-K teachers as well. The way the planning will work is we've asked Voyager, Sopris Learning to, in addition to contacting a public school point of contact, to also contact each NC pre-K contract administrator to work together to develop a community plan along with the school district. In counties where there are multiple school districts, there is a county and city school districts, we've asked them to coordinate with the county school district and the NC pre-K contract administrator to make it a little easier. But that they will create one plan that includes the public school system and then all NC pre-K classrooms, regardless of the setting. Does that make sense? And that is what I have at the moment for pre-K, but are open to any questions that you may have regarding pre-K and this training.
I was just going to remind both teams that now would be the time to open up your cameras, let everyone joining us get to know your faces as the teams that will provide answers to any of those questions that come in.
We did have one question so far. Yeah. Yep. It says, for the units beyond pre-K, will it be for K-5 across the state or another grade band? And it would be, there'll be the pre-K course, and then the K-5 teachers that are part of the DPI initiative would take what we call our 3rd edition course that Tony outlined.
I think we might mention that that's part of this DPI initiative. If a given district wanted to expand that beyond to additional grade bands during those district planning conversations, we can address that. That could be purchased and added onto by the district itself. And we can work with you on a district by district basis. But as Amy mentioned, there is so much funding that's already been approved for this initiative. And there is the opportunity to expand that on a district by district basis using district funds that are available. Is there a designated number of slots for each district in the admin and K-5 teacher training? It is for one administrator per district. If I'm correct, per district or per building?
Per school, per building.
Per building, and then all K-5 teachers.
Yeah, so it's one you've got it, Tony. We'll just keep adding to it though. Legislation has named one administrator per school. And then that also includes our pre-K coordinators and stuff, as Dan had addressed earlier. Also, we've added on, thanks to our additional funding, one school coach. And just to tease that out a little bit further, that is the person who is in your building who will be integrating this into your school through PLCs, professional development. It's not, some schools have reading coaches, some people have instructional facilitators. So it is that one person who helps integrate this school-wide into your professional development and what's happening there. So there'll be one of those per school. We also, you had mentioned K through 5, so also pre-K through 5, that is public and private, not necessarily just in districts. And then also your exceptional children resource teachers in elementary school, as well as your ELL or English language learner teachers. We've expanded it to include them as well. We're trying to make sure we are reaching all students across that continuum to be as consistent as possible and have stretched the money as far as we can stretch it thanks to our support system. So anything beyond that, absolutely, please feel free to, we know there's so many other positions that could be added, so please feel free to work with your Voyager Sopris team to add on what you need. At your expense, hold on, let me, the beyond state funding.
Thank you, Amy. Dan, there was a question that came in for you. It says, can you repeat what you said about city school districts?
Sure, yes. So I just mentioned that when Voyager Sopris Learning reaches out to develop a local training plan, they will reach out to every school district. But with regards to the plan for NC Pre-K for the particularly for the non-public school sites, they will coordinate that training with the county school district just to keep it easy, so that they know kind of where they're going to fit into to which plan, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Next question, are there curricular tools that you can recommend pre-K programs to begin researching that would be beneficial in implementing the science of reading in our programs? Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about that piece with LETRS?
Certainly. We within LETRS are always very cautious to be very clear that LETRS does not endorse or promote or support any given curriculum or intervention program. We want to empower and educate all of you in those classrooms and those administrators on how to be really critical consumers. What questions should you be asking as you look for tools? How to know what type of evidence and research they should be based on, because there are different types of research, and what are the pros and challenges to each of those types of research, so that as you are presented with options from vendors and from all the resources that are available, to be able to make the very best choices for your building, for the students that you serve, and for the needs that they have. So as a matter of practice, we don't endorse or promote any given curriculum or intervention program.
Thank you, Tony. Next question is, what is the sustainability after districts have been trained?
So we are working with Voyager Sopris. That's one of the things that is on our list in our quadrant 2. We try to live in those quadrants, and quadrant 1 right now is just getting this contract approved, getting you the information you need for planning and getting those initial cohorts started. But that is something we have been thinking about, beginning to discuss. And as soon as we have that information, we will certainly share that with you, because we recognize that it's always changing.
Thank you, Amy. Just checking the chat. New question. Are there any districts that have a foundation started for rolling out the pre-K portion of this initiative? Jane, do you want to talk a little bit? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know as far as Guilford, that's kind of been our go-to for some of our knowledge. And we've been working with them a little bit. So I know they started with pre-K, not sure how in depth, but Jane, you may be able to talk a little bit more about others, but I know that's kind of the person we've been contacting.
Yes, no, currently that's the only initiative for pre-K that I'm aware of.
probably throw in there that during those conversations for planning, you'll be able to work with the LETRS team to talk about the challenges that you may have as a district or as, you know, a system, so that we can help to meet those challenges and help to pivot and be as flexible as possible, to make sure, because the end result is ensuring that this is successful and that teachers are able to learn the content and the information and begin to use it in the classrooms with the students. So while we have those planning meetings that we'll set up at the beginnings of each of those cohorts, starting with cohort 1 first and then moving to cohort 2 as soon as cohort 1 gets on their way, and then moving to cohort 3 after that, not only then, but at any point along the way, you will have contacts that you can reach out to if you come up upon a snag or a new roadblock comes in the way, that we really are there to collaborate and partner, and we'll work through those, just like we're going to help our students with those tangles in their brains in the left hemisphere. We're going to work through any roadblocks and tangles that come up along the way and those implementations, and then be able to make any adjustments along the way.
Good. Just checking the chat. I don't see any new questions that have come in.
And I'll add here, Jeffrey, as far as pre-K, and I know Dan's addressed it just a little bit. This is a great opportunity also to think about the fact that we are serving all children in North Carolina in all preschools from all settings, whether they're in preschool or even those who are not. But this is a great time also for you to build relationships with your preschool customers and stakeholders, because ultimately in the legislation, you know, we'll begin sharing DHHS with Christy Snuggs. They've done a great job in aligning the teaching strategies goal in pre-K to K. So we're trying to close some of those gaps in those transition areas. So this is a wonderful opportunity to try to reach out and begin to build those relationships. Whereas, you know, maybe before that hasn't happened, whether that's private or public, they're all our kiddos. So we're hoping that this will be a great step in the right direction to make that happen. Some of you are probably doing that and doing a great job, but some of us get so busy we forget about that. So we're looking forward to seeing how that changes as well.
A new question did come in. How is implementation success measured for pre-K? Is there a post-test? So Tony or Cassandra, do you want to talk a little bit about how that progresses through?
Sure, I'll jump in, and Cassandra, add on and value add. So with the LETRS EC course, as well as that LETRS 3rd edition course for K5, both of those courses, they do have a pre-assessment. Don't anybody get anxious about that. That's just a baseline. We just want everybody to know, for you to know where your understanding and knowledge is before you complete any of the content. And so that when you complete either volume 1 after units 1 through 4 of the 3rd edition course, or after you complete early childhood after units 1 through 4, taking that post test then lets you show the growth that you have made in your acquisition of knowledge. They aren't a requirement. We always hope that everyone strives to an 80% or higher level of mastery. It won't stop you in the system if at any point you struggle and really need some additional support. It will not stop you. You are still able to continue in your learning journey. But we're able then, with a post-assessment, for you to be able to show your growth in knowledge by completing the content. You'll also have little checks along the way that will let you know if you are struggling with any of that content. You can reach out to supports that you have within your building, within your school, within those trainings that you have live, whether they're virtual or in person as well.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. I do see we do have a participant that's having trouble with the camera in the audio. I don't know if there's anything we can do on our side to help with that.
So the cameras, you can't for participants, they're not the ability, they don't have the ability to turn on their camera, just the panelists.
Okay.
As far as sound, I can just say to check your sound settings to see if things are okay there.
Thank you so much, Dan. Next question is, how long are the trainings? Again, I don't know if Cassandra or Tony want to tackle that one and talk about the 3 different courses and the time frame for each.
I can take that. So with regard to the LETRS for early childhood, the way we've broken this up for us to provide you live online training, you will basically have 2 days of live online training for your EC course during the course of that year that you're going through letters. So what happens is, instead of having a full 6-hour day, which if you want to schedule that, you certainly can, but we're giving you also the option to have 2 3-hour segments. So instead of you having a full 6-hour day with an hour break in between, we've broken that down into 2 3-hour training segments that you would do for a live online session. So think about your first year with Letters EC as 4 individual sessions that comprise 2 days. So if you're in Letters for 3rd edition, there's essentially a training for every unit. So if there are 8 units across 2 years, then when you're doing your first year, you're only going to complete 4 units. So for those 4 units, you also have 4 days, 1 day for each unit, and the same rules apply. If you want to have a full 6-hour day, you certainly can do that. But to help with the fatigue of being online for a really long time, we've done 2 individual sessions for 3 hours each. So then essentially for your first year, you've got 8 individual sessions that you would complete when you're going through your letters experience, if you're K-5 letters 3rd edition. For the letters for admin, there are 2 days that have been allotted for the admins to go through their letters experience, but they have some options. So if you are going through the admin course, you can either choose 1 day where you're having an overview of what your teachers experience as they're working through the letters 3rd edition course for those units of study. And then another day would be devoted to working through what we have as the principal's primer. And I have my little display. You would work through the principal's primer text on your 2nd day. Or you have the option of spending both of your days, again, with either a 6-hour session or 2 3-hour segments where you're working through the principal's primer text for both of those days that you have for your principal administrations. Or you might decide you want to spend the 2 days just really going over an overview of what your teachers are experiencing as they have their letters course. So for the most part, 2 days for letters early childhood, 8 days total for letters 3rd edition, but again, 4 your first year, 4 your 2nd year, and then 2 days for the admins, but each of those days can either be completed as a 1 6-hour day with a lunch break in between, or 2 3-hour sessions to kind of break up that time that you would actually be spending live online.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. There was a couple questions that came in specific to times of days for training, specific dates for training, in those items. Jane, would you like to talk a little bit about the process we'll take with each cohort for the planning piece and how we will determine those specific items?
Well, I want to emphasize that we are very flexible. And so when we call and meet with you all, we will listen to you regarding days that you have availability. We just finished planning for Winston-Salem, a very large district, and we got very creative in doing 3 hours one day and 3 hours the next. So like I said, as soon as we get into it, we can help you break down training as needed. So it's important that when you do have your training meeting, your planning meeting, that you do bring possible different options for each division.
In all cohort 1 districts, point of contact should have received an email from our team on Tuesday to go ahead and start to set up that planning meeting. We will make that same outreach to cohort 2 districts later this fall, and then cohort 3 later in the spring as we gear up for the start dates for each of those cohorts. A few more questions came in. There's a question.
Say one more thing. If you did not receive that email, I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can email me directly, or if you're more comfortable emailing Amy, she'll then forward it on to me so that I can then send the email directly to you.
Thank you, Jane.
And Jeffrey, do we want to mention the various time options of the days of how they could organize their training. You want to mention that now too?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. When we get into those planning sessions that Jane just described, we will cover there's AM sessions, PM sessions, even early evening sessions if we need to be flexible, and we're also able to do Saturday sessions if needed. So again, we'll work with each individual district to really customize that to meet your needs and your current schedule within your district. Another question came in, what will district level administrators receive training with building level administrators? Amy, you want to take that one?
Sure. So with the funding that we did have, we focused primarily on the students that are the staff that are closest to the students. Totally understand why district representative who is leading this effort should be included in that. However, with funding, that would be something you would need to work with Voyager Sopris on, and the district would be responsible for that, the additional positions, including those district positions.
Thank you, Amy. Next question, is there a slide that shows the breakdown on times you just described? There is a document, letters planning tool that is part of that outreach when we start the implementation planning that really details the information for each of the courses and gives sample pacing calendars as well for that. So we can share that document out as we progress, but it really does give that very granular detail on how this works for each unit, each course, and each training session. There's a question about the difference between LETRS and LETRS for early childhood. So those are two different courses. So LETRS for early childhood is primarily for pre-K teachers. LETRS is the third, what we call the LETRS third edition course, as Cassandra is showing, the purple book. That will be for the K-5 teachers. They are two different courses that focus. There is obviously some overlap with some of the early information, but primarily they are geared towards the students that those educators at those grade levels are primarily focused on. I think that's the last one. The panelist team members, did I miss any of the questions as I've been reading through? We'll give it one more minute in case some more questions come in.
I see someone asked a question about the pre and post assessments. They were referring to the student pre and post. Tony, did you address that?
Oh, yep.
It's just for teachers. So this professional development, this professional learning is for the educators, and what they are doing from LETRS, they will use and impact and impart upon their students. And there'll be activities with the Bridge to Practice. They'll put all of this into practical terms of trying to make sure they're taking that pedagogy that they're learning from LETRS and using it with their students, with their curriculum. However, as far as the course itself, the pre and post test, the check for understandings, the unit assessments, all of those are taken by the teacher or the participant that's going through the LETRS experience.
Thank you, Cassandra. I missed that one.
That's okay.
Appreciate that.
I'm just going to take the moment to again say how excited we all are that are here on this panel with all of you for this experience that you are all being given the opportunity to participate in. We hear often that as teachers complete this learning for themselves, it is life-changing. And you recognize very quickly the positive impact it has on your teaching, which absolutely affects the students that you work with every day.
Tony, I've also heard the word humbling. It is very humbling. You don't know what you don't know without, I mean, it's been a while. You have a lot coming at you at one time. So that's another great way probably to think about this is as students ourselves and learners ourselves, as reflective as we can be or not sometimes and get caught up in that. This is a great opportunity to learn and take it all in and soak it up and just be humbled by the fact that we have this opportunity.
Absolutely. I see there's a question that came in about the LETRS for Early Childhood course and if it was designed for preschool teachers working in public school settings. The LETRS for Early Childhood course is really intended to be used in a variety of settings where you work with pre-K students. it isn't focused on they have to be in a certain setting. Rather, what are the interactions that you're having with those students? There are embedded videos of classroom interactions. Some of those classrooms are sitting on a mat on a floor. Some of them are outside doing lots of different hands-on different activities that can be applied, whether you might be in more of a home setting or a church community center or within that more traditional school setting. It really applies to wherever those interactions happen with those littlest learners along the way. So we talk in some of that information about even kind of what's the beginning process pre-kindergarten, right? So pre-K, and then when they get into that pre-K setting, what really should be the focus there, and a little bit about, and then you're sending them off, and here's the next step for those students in their learning, so that you're able to reach each of those students that's going to come into your work with them as a pre-K teacher. Those are some of my favorite videos, by the way, because those little ones are so adorable. I don't remember mine being that adorable. Maybe it's because they were mine, and when they're someone else's, they're always cuter.
Maybe give it a 10 or 15 more seconds, see if we get any more questions. Okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. As Tony described, and Jane and Cassandra and others, on behalf of the LETRS team, we're incredibly excited about the work ahead of us. If you, as Jane mentioned, if you have not seen the email to schedule your initial implementation planning call, please reach out to Jane directly. Her email is in the chat box. And with that, I will turn it over to Amy.
And that would only be cohort 1.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. That's right. Yeah,
The
just
rest of you
cohort
coming,
1. Yeah.
coming soon. And I think there's a couple more questions before we go. Is online live, did you say? So when you're doing,
I'll jump in quick. So there are kind of two online pieces. One is an asynchronous online course that you will access anytime on an internet connected device. And then there are the live face-to-face sessions. Some of those will be virtual and they'll be online live synchronously. Some of them over time will be live on site, pulling everyone in together into the same room. So there are two different potential online pieces.
perfect. And the last question it looks like for the day is there a certificate? So I know we will get CEUs. Do you want to talk about how the certificate works for their training?
Certainly. So for the LETRS 3rd edition course, there is a certificate available to you as you complete each unit. You can download it directly to your device, print it, upload it to a cloud, whatever you need to do with it. With the LETRS for Early Childhood course, there is a certificate after you've completed the course, after Unit 4. For LETRS for Administrators, I believe there's a certificate that comes after you've completed that course, or there's a notification within the system that you have completed that course. But those are all available to you as you work through that content.
Thank you, Tony. So again, we are so excited. If you can't tell, I'm looking forward to the opportunities, the possibilities. We have some districts who have gone ahead of us, and we love working with them and collaborating with them. But this has been amazing work behind the scenes. So now I'm excited to see what it looks like out in front of us. And thank you for all that you're doing. If you need any of us at any time, we are available. Also, feel free to follow us on our website for any updates and stuff. We kind of link a lot of those pieces to LETRS. And on a larger scale and larger note, thank you for everything you're doing for our students, our educators, our families, and our communities in North Carolina beyond just science of reading. So have a wonderful year, and we look forward to working together with you.